In her novel Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte wrote, "I am no bird, no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will." There is nothing more deeply seated in the human soul than our need for individuality and independence, to have agency in our lives and be able to make our own decisions. As can be seen by the recent response to government mandates to wear masks, our need for independent choice can become controversial, and oftentimes our right to choose is regulated by the government. One such regulation is access to medical aid in dying. Today, I would like to talk to you about the first law to be passed in the United States to sanction medical aid in dying, the Oregon Death with Dignity Act, or DwDA. We're going to talk about who is eligible for care under this act, what the application process looks like, and what are some considerations for patients who are approved. The Oregon Death with Dignity Act provides legal access to medical aid in dying. This means that a qualified individual has the opportunity to undergo a thorough application process in order to obtain lethal medication. This medication must be self-administered without the assistance of a physician, a friend, or a family member. According to the Death with Dignity Act, as published in the winter 1995 edition of Issues in Law and Medicine, the purpose of this act is characterized by an individual's ability to request medication for the purpose of ending his or her life in a humane and dignified manner. There are, however, specific limitations on who can seek care under this act. In order to be considered, the patient must be 18 years or older and have a terminal illness. Terminal illness is defined within the DwDA as an incurable and irreversible disease that has been medically confirmed and that will, within reasonable medical judgment, produce death within 6 months. The most common diseases that have been reported by patients who have pursued medical aid in dying, according to Trends in Medical Aid in Dying in Oregon and Washington, a report written by Al Rabadi and colleagues and published in the August 2019 edition of JAMA, are cancer at 76.4%, neurological illness at 10.2%, lung disease at 5.6%, and heart disease at 4.6%. An additional limitation is that in order to be covered under this act, the patient must be a resident of Oregon. However, there is no minimum length of residency required to be considered. Now that we've talked about what the DwDA is and who is eligible for coverage, let's go ahead and move forward into the application process. In order to pursue medical aid in dying, the following steps need to be completed in accordance with the DwDA. The first step is to make an oral request. This oral request needs to be made to 2 independent participatory physicians, the attending physician and the consulting physician. Upon receiving an oral request, it is the physician's responsibility to confirm that the patient meets all the criteria and that they discuss alternatives with them, such as palliative care or hospice care. Additionally, they do request that the patient notify family members of their decision. Following the oral request, there is a 15-day waiting period. During that 15-day waiting period, the patient can submit a written request, which is also required. The written request needs to be witnessed by 2 people. One of the witnesses cannot be related to the patient and cannot be entitled to any portion of their estate. They also cannot be a healthcare worker who works at a care facility that is caring for the patient. Additionally, a physician cannot act as a witness. It is recommended to not submit your written request until the paperwork has been successfully completed and filed by both physicians to whom the oral request was made. Following the 15-day waiting period, a second oral request is required. Once the second oral request has been made and the written request has been submitted, there is a 48-hour waiting period before the prescribing physician can physically write the prescription. So now that we've talked about what the DwDA is, who is eligible, and what the application process looks like, lastly, I just wanted to go over a couple of details for after an individual is approved. Pursuing medical aid in dying is a monumental decision, and there are certain elements that do merit careful consideration before moving forward. There are certain circumstances under which qualification is no longer valid. These are outlined in DwDA as accessed on July 29th of 2020. The first being that if the disease or symptoms of the disease cause cognitive decline, which increase confusion or create an inability to understand situations or to make decisions, that patient is no longer eligible for medical aid in dying. Additionally, if the patient is unable to swallow 4 ounces of liquid within about 2 minutes, they are also ineligible. This is something that someone with a neurological condition such as ALS may be concerned about. Another concern that a lot of patients have is how this decision might affect a life insurance policy. According to DeathWithDignity.org, the cause of death on the death certificate will be the underlying disease, so no negative impact will occur. Lastly, there is no requirement for the patient to fill the medication once they've been approved or to ingest the medication after it's been filled. They always have the right and the ability to change their mind. So we've talked about what the Oregon Death with Dignity Act is, who's eligible for coverage, what the application process is, and some considerations for individuals who have been approved are. Independence is an honored American value. And I hope that I've been able to provide a broader understanding of legislation that really reinforces that value and has become the model legislation that has been adopted by 8 other states, Washington included. It may never be something that we have to choose, whether or not we choose to end our lives or to continue. But I am grateful to live in a state that supports an individual's right to choose to die with dignity.